They gave me pain, silence, and rejection. I turned it into power, purpose, and the strongest version of me. Hello, you thought you broke me, didn't you? You thought the silence, the betrayal, the weight of your absence would crush me for good, but you didn't break me. You built something stronger than you ever imagined. Today, I'm not here to tell you I survived. I'm here to show you that I became unstoppable. This is the story of how your rejection forged the strongest version of me. They thought silence would shatter me. It sharpened my voice. At first, I mistook the silence for rejection. I sat there in the stillness, waiting for a knock that never came, a message that never appeared, a voice that never called my name again. It was loud, that silence, louder than the shouting ever was. It filled every room I entered. I carried it into the shower, into bed, into every conversation where I had to pretend I was fine. They thought I'd collapse under the weight of it. They thought the quiet would crush me. But something happened inside me that they never anticipated. I began to hear myself, not the broken version, not the scared, gasping, for-air version. No, I started to hear the version of me I buried beneath all the noise, the version I kept silenced so I wouldn't make anyone uncomfortable. The version that had opinions, instincts, boundaries, and fire. It had been waiting. All this time it had been waiting for the silence. At first it whispered. It whispered things I wasn't ready to believe. Things like you deserved better, and you don't owe them your suffering, and you are not weak for walking away. I tried to mute it. I tried to go back to the quiet they handed me, thinking I'd make peace with it. But the whisper grew, and as it grew, so did I. They underestimated me. They thought if they left me alone, if they withdrew affection, conversation, presence, I'd fold. They thought the absence would feel like suffocation. But the truth is, I learned how to breathe in that absence. I learned how to listen to my own breath, to my own heartbeat. And when I tuned into that rhythm, I found something deeper than survival. I found clarity. Because the truth is silence reveals. It reveals who's real and who's temporary. It reveals what's truth and what's performance. It shows you what you've been distracting yourself from. In silence, you can't run from your wounds, but you also can't ignore your strength. Every quiet night I built myself brick by brick, thought by thought. I sat in rooms they left empty and filled them with vision I created from nothing. I rebuilt with no one clapping. I healed with no one watching. I grew in the dark, without applause, without validation, and that's the kind of strength no one can take from you. They don't know what that kind of silence breeds. They don't understand the power of someone who's been left with nothing but their voice and the will to rise. See, when you take everything from a person and they still choose to get up, what you're looking at isn't a survivor. You're looking at a force. You're looking at a storm in human form. They thought they were walking away from someone they broke. But what they actually did was wake something up, because now I speak differently, not louder, just sharper. My voice isn't desperate for attention. It's calm, steady, certain. It carries weight. I no longer use it to convince or plead. I use it to declare, to define, to draw lines. My silence didn't break me. It trained me. And my voice, this voice they tried to silence, it's the most dangerous thing I own. And I don't mean dangerous in the way they fear. I mean dangerous in the way truth always is, in the way healing always is, in the way you can't control someone who knows who they are now. I am dangerous to everything that tried to cage me. I am dangerous to their expectations of who I should have stayed, and I will never go back to that version, the one that stayed small so others could feel big. That version no longer lives here. Let them wonder what happened. Let them sit in the distance and ask themselves how I became this. Unshakable, let them hear the echo of my voice rising where they expected me to disappear. I don't need revenge. I don't need to explain. I just need to keep moving louder now, wiser now, stronger than they ever imagined I could be, because they thought silence would shatter me. It sharpened my voice. Pain wasn't my end, it was my ignition. You want to know what really changed me? It wasn't some light bulb moment. It wasn't a motivational quote or someone stepping in to save me. It was pain, pure, sharp, all-consuming pain, the kind that doesn't just knock the wind out of you, it rewrites your entire story. I didn't wake up one morning and decide to be stronger. I was cornered, left with no one, back against the wall, and pain became the only voice left in the room. I remember thinking it would kill me. I remember the ache that sat in my chest for days, weeks, months, like a ghost refusing to leave. I couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight, couldn't recognize the person staring back at me in the mirror. That version of me was raw, hollow, grieving things I couldn't even explain to other people. How do you tell someone you're not mourning a person, but a piece of yourself that died in the process? But here's the truth I learned while dragging myself through that fire. Pain is not the end. It only feels that way when you're in it. It tells you everything is over, that you're too far gone, that there's no point trying anymore. But pain is a liar, and at the same time, it's a revealer. It strips you bare so you can finally see what you were really made of. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. It just hits, and in the aftermath you get to choose, stay shattered, or start creating something out of the pieces I chose to build. Not right away, no, for a while I just survived. Some days I only made it from bed to the next breath. But somewhere in the middle of all that, something ignited. A quiet, burning anger, not at anyone else, at myself. Not in a self-hating way, but in a you deserve more than this a kind of way. I got tired of my own helplessness, tired of waiting to be rescued, and that's when I stopped looking for relief and started looking for fuel. Pain lit the match. It showed me everything I needed to see, the patterns I kept repeating, the people I kept excusing, the boundaries I never enforced. Pain held up the mirror and said, "You want different, be different." And I did. Slowly, messily, with setbacks and stumbles and a whole lot of nights wondering if I'd ever get there. But I didn't stop, because pain no longer felt like a prison. It felt like pressure, the kind of pressure that forges steel. They didn't break me, they sharpened me. Life didn't end, it detonated. And from the wreckage, I pulled out everything that still had fire left in it. My will, my voice, my intuition, my standards. The way I spoke to myself changed. The way I let people speak to me changed. I stopped accepting crumbs from the very same hands that starved me. I stopped seeking validation from places that only ever drained me. I stopped apologizing for outgrowing who I used to be just to survive. You want to know why I look different now? Why I sound different? It's not because I healed in some soft, poetic way. It's because I burned. I burned through the layers of false comfort. I burned through the illusion that someone else was coming to fix me. And when the smoke cleared, I was standing there, not perfect, but powerful. So no, pain wasn't the end. It wasn't the finish line. It was the starting gun, the moment that made everything else possible. Without it, I'd still be asleep, still be quiet, still be tolerating things I was never meant to carry. Pain showed up to destroy me, and ended up introducing me to who I really was. I didn't run from it anymore. I let it shape me, cut me, teach me. I let it burn away everything that wasn't real. And what's left now? Fire, focus, clarity. I don't wish it didn't happen. I don't ask for it to be undone, because that pain didn't end me. It ignited me. They tried to bury me, not knowing I was the fire underneath. They thought they were ending me, that by walking away, by turning their backs, by closing doors and burning bridges, they were silencing me. Burying me, and to be honest, for a while I believed it too. I believed that was it, that the story ended there in the silence they left behind. I laid there in the dirt, covered in the weight of everything they didn't say, every goodbye they never gave, every betrayal they never owned. They didn't just walk away, they tried to erase me, but here's what they didn't know. You don't get to kill something that was made to rise. You don't get to bury someone who's built from fire. I wasn't planted in that pain. I was pressed into the earth like kindling. And while they moved on, while they watched from a distance thinking I was gone, I was heating up, quietly, slowly, consistently. They thought I'd rot down there, but I was learning how to burn. You ever sit with yourself in the aftermath of something you thought would break you for good? You ever feel the weight of people thinking you're done? They think if they isolate you, if they smear your name, if they remove their presence, somehow that emptiness will consume you. But all it really does is leave space. And in that space, something shifts, something wakes up. It's not dramatic. It's not some sudden transformation. It's the kind of awakening that happens in complete silence, the kind of strength that doesn't announce itself, it just grows. That's what I did. Every time I remembered a moment where they underestimated me, I added fuel. Every time I thought about how easily they replaced me, I stacked another log. Every time I replayed the scenes where they laughed behind my back, doubted my worth, hoped I'd crumble, I got hotter. Not with hate, not with revenge, with clarity, with purpose, with the unshakable knowing that they didn't bury a mistake, they buried a spark, and that spark became fire. I started to rebuild, not in front of anyone. Not to prove anything, but because I had no other option, because I refused to stay buried in a grave they dug out of fear, not truth. They feared my voice, they feared what I'd become if I ever stopped needing them. They feared my independence, my insight, my intensity, so they buried me, hoping I'd disappear beneath the weight of their dismissal, but what they buried was the very thing they couldn't control. And when I rose, because of course I didn't come back looking for approval. I didn't come back asking for space at the same tables they once pushed me away from. I came back with fire in my veins. I came back knowing exactly who I was. I didn't come for them. I came for everything I forgot I was worthy of. I came for peace, for freedom, for power, for the version of myself I was always meant to be, the one they couldn't handle. You know what's terrifying to the people who tried to destroy you, when you rise without bitterness, when you walk past them with peace in your eyes, when you carry yourself like someone who's no longer touched by their absence. That's power. That's when you know you've truly risen, when their name doesn't even echo in your mind anymore, when they become just another detail in a story that no longer hurts to tell. They thought they buried a victim. But what they buried was a volcano, and the thing about volcanoes is they don't erupt to destroy, they erupt because they've held in too much for too long. They erupt to make room for something new, to create new land, new life, new beginnings, and that's what I did. I erupted not to burn the past, but to build a future on ground I made myself. They never saw it coming. That's the thing about people who only know how to manipulate and control. They can't comprehend someone who doesn't need them to survive. They don't recognize strength until it's staring back at them, untouchable. And now I'm untouchable, not because I'm cold, not because I'm cruel, but because I walked through fire and became it. They tried to bury me, not knowing I was the fire underneath. I stopped begging to be understood and chose to be untouchable. There was a time when all I wanted was for someone to hear me, not just hear the words coming out of my mouth, but actually feel what I was saying. I bent myself backward trying to explain my heart, explain my pain, explain why I reacted the way I did, why I loved the way I did, why I broke the way I did. I poured myself out in words that were never enough. I kept thinking, if I just say it right, if I just show them who I really am, maybe then they'll finally understand, but they didn't, and not because I wasn't clear, not because I wasn't honest. It was because some people don't listen to understand, they listen to respond, or worse, to reject, and the more I tried to explain myself, the more invisible I became. Every time I tried to justify my feelings, I chipped away at myself. I kept shrinking to fit into their level of comfort. I kept translating my soul into a language they never intended to learn, and in doing so, I lost something sacred, myself. There's nothing more exhausting than constantly needing to prove that your heart was in the right place, that your pain was real, that your intentions were pure. You end up performing your truth just to be tolerated. But I wasn't made to be tolerated. I wasn't made to be halfway accepted. I realized that no amount of explaining will ever reach people who have already decided who you are in their minds. You cannot rewrite their version of you if they're committed to misunderstanding you. So I stopped pleading, I stopped justifying, I stopped handing my story over to people who only wanted to edit it. And in that silence, the silence that used to feel like loneliness, I found something else. Power, not loud attention, seeking power, quiet, anchored power, the kind that doesn't need to be seen to be solid, the kind that doesn't ask for permission to exist, the kind that doesn't owe anyone an explanation. And that's when I became untouchable, not because I stopped caring. I still care deeply, but now I care in silence. I care without sacrificing my boundaries. I care without needing to be recognized for it. I don't need applause for my growth. I don't need witnesses to my healing. I don't need to be understood by people who never really saw me in the first place. If I have to explain my worth, it's not the room for me. If I have to beg for understanding, it's not love, it's survival. You know what real strength is. It's walking away not because you're bitter, but because you're clear. Clear that your energy is too sacred to be spent on people who can't meet you at your depth. Clear that your truth doesn't require an audience. Clear that your peace is more important than being liked. There's something liberating about being misunderstood and letting it go, not fighting to correct the narrative. Not scrambling to fix the version of you they made up in their minds, just releasing it, because you're not here to be everyone's favorite. You're here to be free, and freedom looks like being okay with not being chosen. It looks like letting people walk away without chasing them. It looks like loving yourself so deeply that rejection becomes redirection. Every time I let go of someone who didn't see me really see me, I got closer to the version of me who no longer needed their validation. I stopped needing closure. I stopped needing explanations. I stopped needing to make them understand why I felt what I felt. And in that stillness, I remembered who I was before I started proving myself. Untouchable doesn't mean unreachable. It doesn't mean cold. It means I've learned how to protect my peace like my life depends on it, because it does. I'm not for everyone. My energy won't be digestible to people who thrive off chaos, manipulation, and control. I will always be too much for the ones who never intended to meet me fully, and that's okay. I wasn't made for smallness. I wasn't made for easy love. I wasn't made to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding anything they can't control. I was made to stand tall in the fire and not flinch. I was made to love without begging, to walk away without crumbling, and to shine without apology. I stopped begging to be understood and chose to be untouchable. They gave me nothing, so I built everything. I wasn't handed love. I wasn't handed comfort, protection, or safety. I wasn't handed a guidebook, a safety net, or even the decency of being seen for who I truly was. What I got instead was silence, distance, coldness, 1,000 little ways of being told I didn't matter unless I was convenient, unless I stayed small, unless I didn't ask for too much. So I stopped asking. I stopped waiting for someone to show up with what I needed. I stopped hoping they'd one day realize the weight I carried in silence, and the moment I stopped waiting was the moment everything changed. Because when you've been given nothing, you learn to make power out of the scraps. You learn to create comfort in your own skin, even when it still trembles. You learn how to find direction without a compass, how to become your own light in rooms they left dark on purpose. They thought I'd beg, they thought I'd fold, that the absence of love, attention, support, that it would hollow me out until I had nothing left to give. But they never understood one simple truth. If you've survived with nothing, you can build with anything. And I did. I built myself out of empty nights and unanswered prayers, out of betrayal, out of long walks with no destination, just the ache of needing to feel alive again. It started small, the way all rebuilding does. A choice to stop reaching for people who kept pulling away. a choice to stop offering explanations to people who never listened, a choice to hold my own hand even when it felt pathetic, even when it felt lonely. I stopped waiting for the apology, the closure, the reassurance. None of it was coming, so I built without it. I built through the silence, through the heartbreak, through the humiliation of being forgotten and replaced like I was nothing. And you know what? That kind of pain is a blueprint. It shows you exactly where to reinforce yourself, where the cracks are, where the foundation needs to be stronger, so I didn't waste it. I used it. Every moment they ignored me, every time they mocked my effort, every door slammed in my face, I took it all and made something out of it. They didn't see it, of course they didn't. Because when you're busy tearing someone down, you never imagine they'll rise higher than you can reach. But I did, and I didn't rise on applause or support or praise. I rose on discipline, on grit, on those mornings where my chest still ached but I showed up anyway, on those nights I cried in silence but still chose to believe in tomorrow. That's how I built everything from nothing, no handouts, no comfort, just a decision. I will not be reduced to what they left behind. I became the architect of my own healing. I became the builder, the foundation, and the roof over my own damn head. I stopped expecting love to be handed to me in the way I once begged for, and instead I gave it to myself, the fierce kind, the kind that tells you the truth even when it's ugly, the kind that doesn't abandon you when you fall apart. And the beautiful thing, when you build from nothing, you don't fear losing anything, because you know what it's like to stand in ruins and still create. You know what it's like to go without, to feel forgotten, to be dismissed and still rise anyway. You don't carry entitlement, you carry fire. You don't expect things to be easy, you expect to fight. And that mindset, that's what separates people who dream from people who build. They'll look at me now and say I'm different, cold, distant, intense, but they don't understand this isn't bitterness. This is focus. This is peace. This is what it looks like when someone gives up on being saved and decides to become what they needed. I'm not here to be understood by them anymore. I'm not here to make them comfortable. I'm here because I built myself from the ground up, and I owe it to the fire in my chest to keep going. I didn't get the comfort of being guided. I didn't get the softness of being nurtured. They gave me nothing, no tools, no shelter, no map, so I became all of it. They gave me nothing, so I built everything. What was meant to destroy me became my discipline. They thought it would break me. The way it all unfolded, the silence, the betrayal, the pressure that kept building until I could barely breathe, they thought I'd fall apart under it. And for a moment I did. I cracked, I lost my grip. I stumbled through days that felt like endless punches to the chest, nights where sleep didn't come, only overthinking and the constant echo of every word they used to tear me down. I wasn't just hurt, I was unraveling. They had taken everything soft in me and turned it against me. But the thing is, pain doesn't last in its original form. If you don't run from it, if you sit with it long enough, it starts to shift. It becomes something else, and that something for me was discipline. I didn't wake up one morning with a sudden surge of power. It came slowly, quietly, from the decision to get up when I didn't want to. From forcing myself to show up for a life I barely recognized as my own, from choosing to take control in the only place I could, my mind. I stopped looking at the pain like a punishment and started treating it like training. That betrayal, it taught me boundaries. That silence, it taught me self-reliance. That rejection, it taught me how to move forward without applause. Everything they thought would break me was actually sharpening me. Every blow forced me to tighten my grip on my purpose. Every failure rewired me to keep pushing without the need for validation. The more it hurt, the more I trained, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I became militant about protecting my focus, about what I gave my energy to, about who I allowed to speak into my life. And that discipline, it didn't make me emotionless, it made me clear. Clear about what mattered. Clear about what I refused to tolerate again. I didn't just rebuild, I restructured. From the ground up, I used the very things meant to destroy me as bricks. Brick by brick, I stacked it, all the tears, the abandonment, the mistakes, the regret, the shame. I didn't sweep any of it under the rug. I used every piece, and the result wasn't a perfect person. It was a powerful one, someone who didn't need outside permission to grow, someone who no longer waited to be chosen, someone who moved with intention because the pain had taught them exactly where they were never going back. That's the strange gift of being broken by what you thought you needed. It forces you to become everything you were searching for. It creates a silence where all the fake voices fade out and all that's left is yours. I used to crave that silence, now I train in it. I used to dread being alone, now solitude is where I strengthen. Because that's what discipline really is. It's not just habits or routines. It's the ability to keep choosing your future over your feelings, to show up for yourself when there's no one clapping, to keep walking forward with scars, with memories, with doubts, and still refuse to quit. They saw my breakdown. What they didn't see was the work I did after. They didn't see me forcing myself to get up earlier, to stay focused, to put the phone down, to stop replaying conversations that no longer mattered. They didn't see the battles I fought when no one else was around, the ones in my own head. They thought the silence meant they had won. They didn't know I was using it to build something they couldn't touch. Discipline saved me when motivation died, when hope ran low, when love disappeared. It gave me a system, a standard, a structure, something no one could take from me again. I no longer moved based on how I felt, I moved based on who I decided I was. I didn't need the storm to stop, I just needed to stop letting it control me. I learned how to stand in the middle of chaos and still keep my form. That's discipline. So no, what was meant to destroy me didn't win. It didn't even come close. All it did was expose what needed to be strengthened. All it did was strip me down to the core so I could finally rebuild the right way. Stronger, wiser, sharper, untouchable. What was meant to destroy me became my discipline. Asterisk, asterisk, so to the ones who tried to bury me, thank you. To the ones who gave me nothing, who turned their backs, who tried to break me, silence me, destroy me, I owe you nothing, and yet you revealed everything. You showed me what I was made of. I stopped waiting for you to understand me. I stopped waiting for help, for love, for a soft place to fall. What I built came from fire, not favors. I became disciplined in the storm, not sheltered from it. You didn't break me. You built the strongest version of me, and now that version doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't explain. That version is untouchable. So let this be the final chapter of your role in my story. I'm not coming back. I'm not proving anything. I've already won. Not because I rose, but because I rose alone. Asterisk, asterisk.